You've got too much stuff, you know it. And deep down you're tired of pretending it's not a problem. The closets are full. The garage is a mess. There are drawers you haven't opened in years, not because you forgot what's inside, but because you know exactly what's there. And you don't want to face it. Old cards, wedding dishes, baby shoes, outdated paperwork, memories mixed with guilt. And every time you walk past it all you think, I should deal with this someday. But someday never comes. Until life forces your hand. That's what happened to Elaine, 72 years old. Her husband had passed. She was moving closer to her daughter. She had 48 hours to clear out the entire house she'd lived in for over 40 years. No time to overthink. No one to help. Just her and the weight of everything she'd carried physically and emotionally for decades. But here's what shocked everyone, including Elaine herself: she did it. She cleared it all and she didn't break down. She felt free. And it wasn't because she stopped caring. It's because she finally started choosing, not what to throw away, but what to bring with her into the life ahead. This isn't about minimalism. It's not about being cold or ruthless. It's about peace. It's about clarity. It's about giving yourself permission to live now, not trapped in what used to be. And it all began with one rule that changed everything in just 15 minutes. Let's start there. Part 1, Rule 1, the 3-tier triage rule. Elaine didn't start by sorting through photo albums. She didn't begin with her late husband's belongings. She started in the kitchen, the most emotionally neutral place in the house. She stood in the doorway, took a deep breath, and gave herself just 15 minutes. Then, she used a method I now call the 3-tier triage rule, a system inspired by emergency rooms. Because when you're overwhelmed by clutter, you can't treat every item like it's a life-or-death decision. Just like doctors have to prioritize patients, you have to prioritize your stuff. Here's how it works. Tier 1, I need this every day. These are your essentials. Prescriptions, your glasses, your favorite coffee mug, your ID, and the pair of shoes you actually wear. You keep these, no questions asked. Tier 2, I might need this someday. This is the danger zone. It's where clutter loves to hide. Extra kitchen gadgets, old holiday decorations, 5 backup umbrellas, clothing you haven't worn since Bush was in office, but you might use again. Tier 3, I haven't touched this in over a year. Gone, no debate. If you haven't needed it in 12 months, it's not part of your life anymore. Now here's the hard truth, and Elaine was brave enough to face it. Everything in Tier 2 gets treated like Tier 3. Let that sink in. The just-in-case items, the maybe-someday stuff, that's just fear talking. Fear of lack, fear of regret, fear of change. But Elaine realized something powerful. She would rather be wrong about a few items than feel trapped by thousands of them. So in 15 minutes, she looked at her kitchen with new eyes. She had 19 coffee mugs, but she drinks tea. She had 3 slow cookers. She only used one. She had a bread maker she hadn't touched in 8 years. She kept 2 mugs she truly loved. She donated the extras. She gave away the bread maker to a neighbor, and she tossed the rest. That small, simple triage gave her first win, and it gave her confidence, because the moment she let go of the idea that everything might be useful someday, she finally had space for what she truly needed today. And let me tell you, once you do this in one room, you start craving that feeling in every other room. It becomes contagious, not the fear but the freedom. So if you're stuck, start where it's easiest. Don't begin with your late husband's clothes or your childhood keepsakes. Start with the mugs, the drawer full of expired coupons, the gadgets collecting dust. Give yourself 15 minutes, 3 categories, 1 clear decision, and then stop. Because in the next part, we're going to talk about why stopping, yes, stopping, after just 10 minutes might be the most powerful trick of all. Part 2, Rule 2, the 10-minute declutter sprint. Elaine's next breakthrough didn't come from working harder. It came from working smaller. Because the biggest reason people fail at decluttering is they try to do too much at once. They start with a full room, get overwhelmed, shut down, and say, I'll try again next week. But next week turns into next month. And before you know it, years have passed. Elaine had already spent 2 years telling herself, I'll get to it soon. She didn't want to go through that again, so she made a rule. 10 minutes at a time. That's it, not 2 hours, not one whole afternoon. Just 10 minutes, 1 drawer, 1 shelf, 1 little space, and then stop. Why? Because when you're older and when emotions are high, your brain gets tired faster. especially when you're making decision after decision. Should I keep this? What if I need it? But it belonged to Dad. That kind of thinking drains you fast. And when you get drained, you stop making good choices. You start keeping everything just to avoid choosing. But if you only work for 10 minutes, there's no time to overthink. You go with your gut. You make faster decisions. You stay focused. Elaine started with the top drawer of her nightstand. She set a timer on her phone and gave herself 10 minutes. Here's what she found. Expired medications from 2002. 5 pens that didn't work. A broken wristwatch she hadn't worn since her husband's funeral. A whole bundle of greeting cards she didn't even remember receiving. By the time the timer went off, she'd filled half a trash bag and felt lighter. Not because the stuff was gone, but because she actually finished something. And here's the key, she didn't push herself to keep going. She poured a cup of tea, sat on the porch, and just rested. That's the difference. Decluttering shouldn't feel like punishment. It should feel like progress, like you're finally doing something for yourself, not against yourself. She did 5 10-minute sessions that morning, then 4 more in the evening. That's 90 minutes total, less time than one TV movie. But by the end of the day, she'd cleared out 9 spaces that had been untouched for over a decade. And more importantly, she was energized, not exhausted. She looked forward to the next morning because she knew, I can do this again. I don't have to dread it. So if you're stuck thinking, I don't have the energy to do all this, don't just do one drawer, 10 minutes, then stop, breathe. Enjoy the feeling, because the more you finish, the more confidence you build. And confidence is the momentum that gets you through the rest of the house. In the next part, we're going to flip your entire mindset, and it might sting a little. But it's one of the most powerful tools Elaine used to break free from emotional attachment. It's called the Stranger Test. Part 3, Rule 3, the Stranger Test. This next rule might be the hardest, but it's also the most freeing. We call it the Stranger Test. And it goes like this. For every item you pick up, ask yourself one simple question. If a complete stranger walked into my house after I'm gone, would they understand why I kept this? Not your daughter, not your best friend. A stranger. Someone who didn't live your story, didn't share your memories, didn't know your losses or your little quirks. Elaine tried this one afternoon with a stack of magazines from 2004 she found under the coffee table. She hadn't opened any of them in years, but she kept telling herself they were too good to throw out. So she asked, would a stranger keep these? Nope, just like that, out they went. This test changed everything for her. Because when you see your things through someone else's eyes, the emotional fog starts to lift. You're not looking at the dress you wore to your son's graduation. You're looking at a dress that hasn't fit in 15 years, still taking up space in a closet you can barely close. You're not holding your late husband's old razor because it's sacred. You're holding plastic from the 80s that's rusting and forgotten in the back of a drawer. Let me be clear, this rule isn't about erasing your story, it's about clarifying it. Choosing what truly represents your life, and releasing what doesn't. Elaine used the Stranger Test on her photo albums. She had 19 albums stacked in a cabinet. Most were filled with duplicates, blurry shots, or pictures of people she didn't even recognize anymore. So she sat down with a box of sticky notes and asked, which photos actually tell my story? 3 albums made the cut. Not 19, 3, she picked the ones that captured real joy, real milestones, real people who shaped her. And then she did something brilliant, she made copies for her daughter and grandson. She didn't just declutter. She passed on legacy. You can do that too. Elaine applied the same test to her bookshelves. She had over 300 books, many she'd never finished, some she didn't even remember buying. So she asked, would a stranger understand why I'm keeping this? When she was honest, the answer for most of them was no. Romance novels from the 90s, outdated cookbooks, diet guides from when fat was the enemy gone. But that one novel she reread every winter, that stayed, proudly on the shelf. This rule is tough. It forces you to separate who you are now from who you were. But that's the whole point of decluttering. To make space for the life you're living, not the life you already lived. So next time you hold something and feel stuck, try asking, if I wasn't here anymore, would this item tell anyone who I really was? And if the answer is no, you already know what to do. In the next part, we're going to tackle the most common excuse we all use when trying to keep too much. But what if I need it someday? Elaine had a powerful way of cutting through that fear, and you'll want to hear it. Part 4, Rule 4, the Replacement Reality Check. Now let's talk about the most common lie we tell ourselves when we're surrounded by clutter. I might need this someday. Sounds harmless, right? But let me ask you something honest. How many things in your home are you holding on to, not because you use them, but because you're afraid to need them again? This one thought has cost people years of peace, thousands of dollars in storage, and entire rooms they can no longer fully use. Elaine had that thought too. A lot. Especially when she reached the garage, boxes of cables, mystery chargers, old Tupperware lids, holiday napkin rings, foldable chairs from dinner parties 10 years ago. All just in case. So she came up with a rule, one that changed her entire approach. She called it the Replacement Reality Check. 3 simple questions. For every single item, she forced herself to answer these. 1. If I needed this exact item tomorrow, could I realistically find or replace it? Most of the time, the answer was yes, and quickly. 2. How much would it actually cost me to replace this today, not how much it used to cost? Not what you think it's worth. Look at it honestly. Would it really break the bank? Elaine looked at a $12 slow cooker she hadn't used in 6 years. It was taking up half a shelf. She laughed. I could buy a better one on sale next week if I really needed it. 3. In the last 5 years, how many times have I actually used this item? Not thought about using it, not meant to use it, actually used it. If the answer was 0, out it went. Let's be honest here, most of the things we keep just in case never actually get used. And the tiny handful that might, they can usually be replaced for less than $20. But here's the real cost. Every item you store just in case takes up space, not just in your home, but in your mind. It adds to the visual clutter, the mental noise, the decision fatigue. Elaine realized she wasn't saving money. She was paying with her peace of mind, her time, her energy to store things she didn't need. So she let go. The dinner party chairs, gone. She hadn't hosted more than 4 people in 8 years. If she ever wanted to throw a big party again, she could borrow or rent. Easy. Boxes of yarn and sewing supplies. She hadn't done a project since her hands started giving her trouble. She donated them to a local crafting group that lit up with joy. She felt relief, not loss. Because the truth is, in this stage of life, peace and space are worth far more than the $18 it might cost to rebuy a blender. So here's your challenge. Pick one item today, something you're keeping just in case. Ask yourself the 3 questions. And be honest, because you might just realize you're not saving anything by keeping it. You're giving up far more by not letting it go. In the next part, we'll talk about how to stop wasting emotional energy on the wrong things and start choosing what truly deserves your heart. Part 5, Rule 5, Energy is a limited resource. Here's something nobody talks about when it comes to decluttering, especially for older adults. You don't have unlimited energy, not physical energy, not emotional energy. Not anymore. And that's not a weakness. It's just reality. And it's one of the most important things Elaine learned during her 48-hour reset. She was sorting through a massive pile of clothes in her bedroom. 67 items stuffed into a closet built for half that. Blouses from when she was teaching, formal jackets, dresses that hadn't fit in a decade, even a few impulse buys with the tags still on. And here's the thing. She only wore about 10 of them, over and over. At first she tried giving every item the same attention. Do I love this? Could I wear it again? What if I lose 10 pounds? But after 30 minutes, she was emotionally exhausted and hadn't made a dent. That's when she realized something that changed everything. Not every item deserves the same emotional weight. So she created a mental scale from 1 to 10. A 1 meant, this means nothing to me, I don't even know why I kept it. A 10 meant, this is deeply personal, it tells my story, it brings me comfort. Everything else landed somewhere in between. And here's the rule, only the 8s, 9s, and 10s got her energy. The 1s, 2s, and 3s, gone, no hesitation, no drama, that closet, she kept 12 pieces. The rest went to a women's shelter where they could actually be used. It wasn't just about space. It was about reclaiming mental clarity, because every time she opened that closet before, she felt overwhelmed. Now, she felt calm, focused. Like she could breathe. She started applying the same principle everywhere. The garage was next. boxes of tools she hadn't used since her arthritis flared up, camping gear from trips she knew she'd never take again, stacks of manuals for appliances she no longer owned. Each item got a number, most were ones and twos. They went quickly and without guilt. She even did it with paperwork. Tax returns older than 7 years. Rated a 1, straight to the shredder. Medical documents and insurance policies. Rated a 10, filed and labeled. Elaine stopped wasting energy on stuff that didn't matter and started protecting her emotional capacity like the valuable thing it is. And that's what I want you to remember. Your energy is not infinite. Spend it on what lifts you up, not what drags you down. That decorative pillow you don't even like. That broken clock you meant to fix 5 years ago. That drawer full of expired coupons, old chargers, and random paperclips. They're not worth it. Your piece is. So next time you feel stuck, don't ask, should I keep this? Ask, does this deserve any more of my energy? If the answer is no, let it go. Because in the final part, we're going to shift from letting go of the past to stepping fully into your future. And it might just be the most emotional part of this journey. Part 6. Rule 6, letting go is an act of love. There's one last rule Elaine followed, and in many ways it was the most beautiful. Letting go isn't forgetting, it's honoring. And when it's done with love and intention, it becomes a kind of ceremony. Because here's the truth, you're not just sorting through stuff. You're sorting through a lifetime. The wedding china, the suit he wore to church, the box of your daughter's preschool drawings, the apron your mother always cooked Sunday dinners in. These things don't just take up space, they hold memories. And when you try to throw them away like trash, it hurts. Elaine didn't just bag things up and drop them at Goodwill. She made a choice to say goodbye with love. She created little rituals, not because she was being sentimental, but because she was giving herself closure. With her husband's ties, she laid each one across the bed, gently folded them, and spoke aloud the memories they held. This one you wore to our anniversary dinner. This one's you hated, but I loved it on you. Then she picked one to keep, just one, and donated the rest. And it didn't feel like loss. It felt like release. With her daughter's childhood artwork, she photographed each piece. Then she created a digital album called Masterpieces from My Girl. She even added little captions. Kindergarten turkey with googly eyes. Crayon rocket ship. Still makes me smile. Her daughter cried when she saw it, not out of sadness, but because she never knew her mom had saved so many moments. Even her cookbooks got a ceremony. Elaine flipped through the pages, reading the notes she'd scribbled in the margins over the years. Add more cinnamon. Don't serve to Bill. She kept the one that held her grandmother's peach cobbler recipe. The rest were passed on to a neighbor just learning to cook for her family. And here's what I love about this part of Elaine's story. She didn't treat letting go like failure. She treated it like gratitude. Thank you for the memories, she'd whisper. Now go make new ones with someone else. Because that's what this is all about. Not just downsizing, not just clearing space, but shifting how we carry the past so we can walk lighter into what's next. Letting go is not rejection. It's love in motion. It says, this mattered, this shaped me, and now I set it free with peace. So as you face your own things, the boxes in the attic, the photos in the drawers, the clothes in the closet, ask yourself, what do I truly need to take into the next chapter of my life? And what can I release with gratitude so that I can finally breathe again? Elaine didn't just clean out a house in 48 hours. She stepped back into her life fully, freely, and with a heart wide open. And you can too, just start with one drawer, one shelf, one honest moment at a time. You don't need to clear out your whole house in 2 days like Elaine did. But you do need to start, not because anyone's forcing you, not because you should, but because you deserve the peace that comes with living only among the things that truly serve and support you right now. This isn't about perfection. It's about permission, to let go, to breathe again, to make space not just in your home but in your heart. Start small, start today. And most importantly, start with kindness toward yourself. You've carried so much for so long. Now it's your turn to feel light again.